Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of the Awakening Bodies podcast. We continue to explore the practicality of faith. On this week's episode, we talk about how to discern what is God's will versus what is our will as humans. We talk about the importance of asking and how to properly ask for the things that we would like to experience in life, and to get clarity in regards to those actions, whether they're in alignment with God's will for us. And finally, the most important part, action. How to take consistent action, persistent action, action that eventually over time brings about the results. As you'll hear in today's conversation, faith without actions is dead. So we need to couple the faith to be able to see what is unseen with the actions, regardless of how unsurmountable the challenge that we have in front of us may seem. If you haven't subscribed to the newsletter yet, go ahead and do so. Next year is going to be a big opportunity for you to be able to expand yourself in new ways, and we are committed to bringing you that level of value so that you can take yourself and your life and your relationships to the next level. So go ahead, down below, you'll see the link. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter, go ahead and do so, and we're looking forward to be able to bring you more level of clarity, understand what you're looking for more of, so we can bring you better value as 2024 unfolds. Welcome. I'm really excited to talk about this conversation. This is, for us, in the past couple of months, has been an growing seed, and it's the idea of faith without action is not faith. And we take a look at so many different stories in life. I mean, I was going to say scripture, but even in life, how many stories do we know of people that have taken action on without knowing the result coming about? And through the journey, it expands. They get the result, even though they may not necessarily see it right away. I'm really excited because as we have dove in deep into our 40-day prayer challenge, and then alongside with that, chasing the wild goose, it's been very clear for me.
These are books, by the way.
These are books. Yes, these are books. Mark Batterson, highly recommend. If you're looking to deepen your prayer life, if you're looking to just explore, like, what is this life that you're living through? Are you tapping into your full potential? Are you stepping forth in just what you think is available? Because, you know, as humans, we look at life this way. It's like, this is what we see available when there's a magnitude of possibilities available. And through that, specifically the wild goose, one thing is very clear, that for me, in my life, I've been waiting for signs to show up before taking action. In our reality, it's the complete opposite. We take actions, and then through that, signs come about that show us whether we're moving in the right direction or whether we're moving away from where we're supposed to be.
Yeah. If you have been following our podcast for some time now, you kind of know that we're moving through a journey right now.
Oh, yeah.
And we're currently being tested in different areas of life, as I feel like we all are, right? If we're not growing through life, are we really enjoying it, right? It's during these moments of challenge that really sculpt us in different ways. And so we've been going through it. So to give a little bit of a backstory, if you haven't heard, we are currently in the midst of switching career paths with Sebastian. Really stepping into not even career paths, but really owning the space that you're in. You've stepped away from a company that you were with for the past 5 years.
Can I just pause you? Stepping into God's calling for me.
Yeah. And we both actually have felt this on different levels too, of that being like your time at the company that you were at was becoming expired. I've noticed this even for my life, where I've stayed in comfortable places, but it was an uncomfortable feeling being there.
Yeah.
But the uncomfortable became comfortable.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically, I know I'm just going to branch off.
Please,
here,
yeah, it's free flow.
When I was personal training, and I was at this gym for approximately like 3 years, and after like 2 years, I really felt that I was doing myself and even my clients a disservice by staying there. I just knew that there was something in my heart that was calling me more. But again, I was so comfortable with where I was at. It took me a few more months to then make the decision, because I didn't want to like let them down. I didn't want to leave them. However, we all feel, I deeply believe, like there's always this deeper calling in our heart. We always have that guiding system dictating like where we should be.
Yeah.
And now it's like, are we actually following through on that? Are we actually listening? And like what you brought up in faith is like, are we actually taking action even in the scary times? Because that's what faith is all about.
For sure. And I have some questions for you on what you just shared. So, for one, I remember when you were looking to transition out of personal training, you were called that was no longer the place for you. However, your commitment to your clients kept you there. And so I acknowledge that because you could have easily stepped away at any point in time and it would have been fine. But your commitment to them kept you there.
Mhm.
What shifted for you that had you say, okay, you know what? I know this is not where I'm supposed to be. I'm going to shift.
Well, it's funny because I remember telling myself like the only way I'm gonna like leave is if one, I get a position that's like in a holistic clinic because I really wanted to start moving towards holistic practices and nutrition and all that. Or two, I would have to move. It was like I couldn't justify leaving with either of those callings being open, even though that wasn't maybe the best. That was just me coming like negotiating with myself, even
Mhm.
though that if I made this the jump sooner, something would have opened up,
Mm.
which we'll dive deeper into.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like perfectly with the conversation of faith.
Yeah, but what really allowed me to leave was so during that time period, I was going to school. I was in Integrative Institute of Nutrition.
Hmm.
So I was training, I was doing that, and I took I knew that calling was there. But then I started actually taking on clients in the gym. Like instead of us training, like we would sit down and like go over nutrition and go deeper into deeper parts of what health actually is. And then COVID happened. And then
Mm.
it was like, okay, doors were shut. And ironically, at that point, my unemployment, something happened with it during that time period. So there was no money coming in. And
Mm.
it was like, I have bills that I have to pay. I need to put, I mean, gratefully we were living with your parents at the time, but like still like I wanted to provide food as well for myself. And so it's like I need to make something happen. And that's when I went like full force into my coaching. And then yeah, that's kind of like when it started. I was still training people online.
Yeah.
And then I remember when the gyms opened back up and I went. For some reason I went, even though I knew like I'm not coming back here. Like
Mm.
it was just over. But I went and then I felt my mind starting to like negotiate with myself again. And I was like, no, this chapter is done.
Yeah.
Don't go back.
And it's so easy for, especially as we're stepping into new areas, it's so easy for the old self to revert back into reality. So it's like we make a commitment to do something different. The moment that we start to step into that new journey, something challenging comes around. And the easiest thing is to go back to who we used to be. That's all we knew. So if it's much easier to go back to what we knew, then most people go there. Again, I've been there before. And I think that's where the essence of transformation comes into the picture because we're not looking to change anything because changing has a context of going back to something that was. We're literally shifting into a whole new reality through transforming into that.
Mm.
So it's like this continuous repatterning, this continuous action, continuous faith, knowing that you may not have the results right now, but continuing to do so will lead you to that next step.
Yeah. And I just want to add something because I was actually sitting with it this morning.
Hmm.
Um, we've been waking up at like 5, 6 a.m. That was like a really big commitment for us
Yeah.
to move through. However, last night, went to bed later, things, and I allowed myself to sleep in
Hmm.
until 7.
Hmm.
And I found myself going through the same emotions and same way of being that I would typically go through when I would wake up at 7.
So what do you mean? Like make it real for me? Because I hear you, but like, what do you mean?
Yeah, so like when I wake up at 7, it's like I get up, I would immediately check my phone.
Ah.
I would then come downstairs and kind of just feel like not really clear of like, I mean, we prayed and then journaled, but like my flow is just off.
Mm.
AKA like the identity that I created myself as when I was waking up at 5 and 6, it was off.
Mm.
And I just felt myself being like, ooh, yeah, I don't want to come back here. Like
Mm.
this doesn't actually feel good. Even though if I woke up, maybe had 7 hours instead of 8, like I'm just a different person when I
Yeah.
wake up that early because I've created those habits and those rituals for myself at that time.
Mm. Mm.
And
Mm.
it's so easy to just go back to what's used to. And not even that, but the subconscious, like you don't really have a choice
Yeah.
unless you catch it.
Yeah.
And then immediately I was starting to notice that. And I was like, all right, I need to go move my body and like shift my state immediately.
Yeah.
We only had a short amount of time in between working out and the podcast right now, but I was like, I need to go do that. I need to shift my state and shift my energy.
Huh.
And now I'm like, okay, I feel like the 5 a.m. we're in right now. Like,
Mm,
let's go.
mm. Wow, as you were sharing, you gave me the experience of being snowboarding. And going snowboarding, you'll find grooves. And if you're out of the groove, you feel shaky, but then you get back in the groove and now you're moving forward. And the way in which that related with what you're sharing is here you are, you wake up at 7, you went back in your old groove. Like even the pattern of, because I know looking at your phone first thing is something that you've been working on for a while.
Yeah.
And it sounds like when you wake up early, that's not the case. Here you are, you wake up at 7. It's like the immediate groove was, okay, go check my phone.
Hmm.
So good. So good.
Yeah.
And this is where for like the subconscious is so important to be mindful for. Because and it's like a big conversation because how can you be unconscious? How can you be conscious of that which is subconscious? It's like a trick question, but it comes into the picture through actions. What new actions are we taking to reshift that pattern, to step
Hmm.
into some new molds, new grooves?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. Good for you. Way to realize that. To like understand that here I am, I'm stepping into some old grooves and to change that pattern. What was like the first thing that came to your mind as you caught yourself in that old
Hmm. It was more so just like shock. Like, what are you doing?
pattern? Yeah.
But then I felt myself like kind of arguing with myself.
Uh,
And it was like, no, it's okay.
mm,
Like, you could do this right now.
mm,
It's almost like that little voice that I know isn't there to support me.
yeah.
It just wants me to go back into what's comfortable, what's safe.
Yeah.
And even though it's giving me temporary pleasure in the moment, it's
Hmm.
not satisfying me long term.
Mm,
To talk about our main conversation, I truly believe that God plans like these ideas that are in our heart that
yeah.
we have to discern because that's what's really going to be fulfilling. And they're typically not pleasure that you feel in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's to continue on the groove of God because we've been
God.
the groove of God. GOG. We've been on this transformative journey now for almost a full year where, I mean, scripture has fully implanted itself into us. We just shared a beautiful time with my aunt and my mom and her husband in Texas where there was so much of that. I mean, we know the foundation is all that. Where I think about, as you're pointing to, it's like when we step into a plan that's bigger than our own, what's going on there? When we step into a plan that's bigger than our own, it's not going to be comfortable for us. It's so much easier for us to step into the short-term pleasures of what we want. We just watched this movie, The Shift. And if you are curious about some good movies, it's called The Shift. It's in the movie theaters, produced by Angel Studios, plugging that in, a creator of The Chosen. And at the end, the core was when we make decisions based on self, just us, we're not making decisions that are for the greater good. But that's so challenging because we as humans, it's like we're always listening to WIFM, what's in it for me? And if that radio station is not in tune, it's like, oh, but am I gonna win? Is this gonna make me successful? Am I gonna be able to earn enough money? Am I gonna get the accolades? Am I gonna be seen? Am I gonna be worthy? Like go on and so forth. I'm told all these different narratives. But we're here, at least we believe, at least I believe. I'm sorry for generalizing for you. I believe that we're here for much bigger purposes. And
Mhm.
this is where really discerning what our will versus God's will is starts to become a like moment to moment experience.
It's so true that it is moment to moment. And I'm really glad that you bring that up because this is an area that I have personally have been navigating and confronted by.
Hmm.
Because sometimes we think, or at least I thought, that I'm going to know what God wants me to do because I'll hear an audible voice or like I'll know the exact steps.
Yeah.
But it's not always like that.
Mm.
And so, how would you support? And I know we've come a long way with this, and this is why we're talking about it. But
Yeah.
what would you say, like, step number one is to supporting someone discern God's will versus their own will?
Yeah. And this is just a personal experience for me. I think one of the most important things is to be mindful for are my actions that I'm taking, are those actions just for me? Is this just for my personal pleasure or my personal gain? I think that's something that, again, for me to dive deep into what scripture says, into what Jesus said, into, and let's just say Jesus, because there's been so many different things that have been put around what Jesus said, but Jesus said one thing, and it's love God and love your neighbor like you love yourself. So if at any point in time I'm not in that space, that's a key place for me to explore. Okay, is this now in my will? Like, am I doing this just to earn money? Or is the earning of this money going to be in some sort of way to honor God and honor the people around me? Because it could be I could literally be doing the same exact thing, but the intent would shift what that could be.
Mm.
And the way in which I see it is, I think that it's all God's will. Like, even if I'm taking an action that may not necessarily be part of his bigger plan, that lesson that I'm going to go through, that breakdown, that challenge, that detour is going to eventually lead me back to that big lesson. Now, the question is it going to be a day detour or 50 years detour? That's where it's like, okay, can I discern? Can I listen? Can I be with? Can I actually deepen my personal relationship with him so that I can say, oh, you know what? This detour, I realize now this detour is taking me completely in a different direction. And, at first the view from here looked really good, but now I'm in the actual road and and there's potholes everywhere. There's pots in the road.
Yeah, it's so true. And again, I love what you said, moment to moment, because you could get a word or like a vision. Like for me, it personally comes through like when I write.
Yeah.
Like I really do believe like God speaks to me when I write and even speak out loud.
Hmm.
I know some people see like visual and they see like they dream and they see different things. For me, at least in this chapter of my life right now, that's how it's showing up. However, moment to moment, because it can be so clear one day, and then I found myself getting so caught up on what that vision was, where I
Yeah.
would cling on to it. And then as the weeks went by, I wasn't okay with it shifting.
Mm.
It was like now I'm trying to control it
Hmm. Hmm.
instead of allowing God to show me how it's evolving.
Mm.
And it's
Mm.
like, it's this delicate dance, right? Of like, okay, you showed me something now. How can I move forward and in a powerful way and act on it?
Yeah.
But also like, is this still the thing that you are calling me to do?
Yes.
And it can constantly change. And honestly, that's why I had a hard time creating goals for like a long time,
Mm.
because it was like things are always changing. And I really feel like, yes, this is what I might want in this moment. And I feel like it's aligned, but it also might shift.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's being okay with the shifting and the flowing and really just discerning of like, what am I supposed to be doing? Like wake up in the morning, God, what's in store for me today?
Yeah.
Like, please allow me to see what is in front of me so I can actually fill on it.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the principles of creation is detachment. It's having a very clear vision as to where you're looking to go, but then being detached. There's a quote that says that a human makes plans and God laughs. So it's the realization that we may have an idea, or like, again, it's like right now, something is happening that we don't know that is going to, at one point in time, reach our ears, come into our experience, and shift everything. I'll give an example. We had a friend who was visiting us a couple weeks ago, and the 2 days after they visited us, he got a position doing something that he loved at a company that was very much aligned with him. When he was with us 2 days earlier, that wasn't even part of his peripherals. There was no application. There was no reach out. It was like, I'm,
Dry.
huh?
It was a season of dryness.
It seemed like it. Yeah.
No, it was.
Well, he didn't have any idea as to what was going to come his way. But 2 days later, out of the blue, company reaches out to him and gives him exactly what he's looking for. So it's like being detached and trusting. And I was reading today in scripture and talking about abiding in him, and abiding meaning like resting on him, like trusting in him, like really putting my mind, my heart, everything, knowing and trusting, having that belief that it's going to work out. Now, that it could be something that for a practical world could sound impractical. However, I say this: if you find yourself worried and you find yourself being in a place of overwhelm, how is that being practical in the creation of your goals? If you're caught up in a rut and you don't know what to do, how much is you holding on to anxiety going to support you moving forward? Like, what if, play the game, what if there truly is a plan for all of us? And all we got to do is say, okay, here's my hands. I'm willing. Use me.
Mm.
And then comes a human side. act on it. Because we can't be on the couch chilling saying, use me, use me, use me.
And sit there eating Doritos, watching Netflix.
No, no, no,
There's practical steps to follow.
for sure.
And even to go back to what I was saying, how things can change day by day, it also can become a little tricky because are you actually showing up? Like, is that actually self doubt coming in?
Mm,
Is it like, are you not getting that end result because things have changed? Or is it because you just become stagnant in your action?
mm,
Or are you not believing?
mm, mm, mm.
And so it's constantly checking ourselves day by day. And really, honestly, this whole, just side note, Awakening Bodies in this podcast is really just for us too.
Oh, for sure.
It's like, if
For
you're
sure.
listening, this is amazing, but
Yeah.
really this is just like digesting things that are going on in our lives.
Yep.
And so, like, I just want to say that from the start
Yeah.
because this is just our processes. And if it lands in a powerful way for other people, like, that's amazing. And that just brings so much joy to my heart. But it's just a dissection of our lives.
Yeah. Which, by the way, for anybody listening, thank you guys. Because as this is a passion project for us and it's become like a therapy session for us every single week in the most beautiful way, we get so many conversations and reaches out and regarding to the podcast. And we have a friend Brittany, for example, who we just saw. Huh?
Nothing.
Hey, we got to call out the community. And she's telling us that she's listening and binge listening and binge watching. And she's like, I'm so grateful because I may not be in the same state that you're at. And I may not see you very frequently, but I feel like I'm in your world consistently. And that's beautiful. Somebody else said the same exact thing this past weekend. I feel like I'm getting to know you and Lauren at a much deeper level just listening to the podcast. So it's thank you for listening and thank you for being here, because while this is for us to navigate life, this is about building a community. This is about being able to create a sense of a connection with people, which is why we're creating the newsletter, which is why we're creating initiatives to be able to bring a sense of connection, being able to have you share with us what you're looking for more, so that again, we can be as a community. And eventually there's going to be some live events as we take on our next journey, which that will be for a different conversation. As we take on that next journey, it's to build community. Like, part of it is to go out and meet new people, to create a new level of connection with others that we wouldn't have met if we were to stayed where we're at today. But okay, let's go back onto the conversation, because you asked, what's the first thing? For me personally, is it going to be better for the world or is it just for me?
Yeah,
You were also pointing towards something really big, which is, and you would been kind of the theme of what you were saying, is asking. To really be in a place of inquiry and not just be the one that knows, but actually ask.
Yeah, I've had a big revelation around this recently. And I feel like this has been something that I know my father has said, and it's been ingrained in me. It's like, yeah, God knows what I want. Like, God knows what's best for me. God knows He will provide. And so that has put me in a place of what a beautiful just surrender, right? Because it's like, I know I'm going to be taken care of. However, it didn't put me in charge of actually asking for that thing.
Yeah.
And so what I mean by that, for instance, is like, yeah, we want opportunities to come our way.
Yeah.
And like, in my subconscious, I'm like, yeah, God will provide that. But God isn't going to just come down and break down your door and give you everything.
No.
You know, God is He's a gentleman. So you have to ask for it.
Yeah.
And being clear and being just very direct in the asking will open up those doorways.
Yeah.
Right? Knock and you shall.
You see? Well, knock and it shall be open unto you.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. Seek and you shall find.
Yeah. And so it's like we have to be adamant about knocking and actually voicing it.
Yeah. I remember when I first started to learn about the law of attraction.
I was just going to bring this up.
Okay, go ahead. And how it was like, you wouldn't go to a restaurant and be like, okay, Mr. Waiter, bring me food. And then they come by with whatever, and you're like, oh, but I didn't want this. It was like, yeah, but you told me to bring you food. So it's like, are we actively seeking and asking? You bring up, like, there's the example of the blind man that's at the door of the temple, and he hears Jesus come by, and he's like, Jesus, Jesus. And Jesus stops and goes and talks to him. And Jesus asks him, what do you want? Like, obviously, Jesus knows what he wants. This man is blind,
Yeah.
but he wasn't just gonna be like, "I know you. I'm gonna do this for you, even though you don't ask for it." So it's like we have to literally ask. I remember going through a program through Landmark, and one of the things that they always talk about is anything and everything is absolutely possible if you create that possibility with everybody around you. That doesn't mean that everybody around you is going to support you and help you and give you a hand. But that means that the more that you speak about what you're doing, the more you're like literally breathing life into that idea. The more that you bring in that possibility into fruition. Because, and it's happened before, literally just happened the other day. I'm talking about what we're doing, and someone's like, "Oh, someone that I know just went on a travel trip, and this is what they did. Maybe you could connect with them, and they could give you some guidance." It wasn't like I was like, "Hey, I'm doing this. Do you know anybody?" It's like, no, this is just what we're up to. This is what we want to create. And through that creation, that conversation, that open dialogue, it's a way of asking.
Mm.
And that asking eventually brings about some sort of avenue, guidance, direction.
Yeah. And again, it's asking, am I on the right path?
Mm-hmm.
Going back to gaining the clarity around it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this where you want me? And it's also like, you also sometimes don't need to ask to. I know this is
What do
like
you mean?
so
Yeah, what do you
contradictory,
mean? What do you
but
mean?
it's like eventually it becomes a point where things are clear and they've already been answered. Stop trying to go back and look for more signs.
Oh man. Oh man. In the Native American culture, they say don't pray for the same thing twice.
Mm.
If it's been answered, why are you praying again?
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a difference between praying, asking for something, and watering the seed of faith into something. Like I water the seed of a breakthrough every single day, and I know in my hearts of hearts that breakthrough's already happened. So it's not like, God, give me a breakthrough. It's like, God, you've given me a breakthrough. I'm going to water my seed every single day so that the fruit comes about. Which is, again, it's a fine distinction between asking and watering. Asking is you're seeking, watering is you're nourishing. And in the process of nourishing, you know that the ask has already been answered. And again, it's like you take a look at so much of what is said in scripture. It's like before you ask, he already knows what you want.
Mm.
So to your point, sometimes you don't have to ask because your heart asks. Now, when we do ask, can we be fruitful enough to actually nourish that seed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And I guess it's where I'm saying with this too. It's like sometimes you just need to take the action and
Well,
stop
that's,
looking for the signs and
yeah,
stop looking for like, what do I do next? Okay, tell me. Like, you planted the seed in my heart. Okay, what do I do next?
yep,
Like, yes, it's good to seek for guidance, but sometimes just take the action
yeah,
and have faith that the actions that you take are going to lead you closer to where you're meant to be.
yeah.
Like, and again, I say this for myself because there's been many parts and positions in my life where I have this like, ooh, like that was present, like this desire of like, this is what I'm meant to create in my next project, or
Hmm.
like, this is, I'll just stick with that, right? And then a few days go by, and then I begin to question it. And I begin to be like, okay, where am I supposed to be in this creation process? But yet I haven't even taken action on it.
Mm.
It's like sometimes you want the answers before we take the action, and it goes the
It's
other
the other
way.
way.
It goes
Yeah,
the other way. Moses didn't part the sea. Like it wasn't just parted and then he got to walk through. Like he took that first step and then things parted.
yeah,
And that's what I'm discovering so much of our life right now. It's the more we take the steps, the more things open.
yeah.
And it's not the other way,
Right.
which in our logical mind, like that's what makes the most sense. Like people usually say, before you quit your job, go get another job. So you have something beforehand. And I'm guilty of this. I said
Hmm.
this to you,
Yep,
you know?
yep.
And it's like, but where's your faith?
Hmm.
Where's your faith? Like, yes, there's this level of being responsible, quote unquote, but are you actually being irresponsible by not listening to that
Oh
call?
man, go deeper into that. Go deeper into that. That's a big conversation.
Well, it's sometimes we think that we're being responsible by doing things that are keeping us comfortable, when in reality, there's something that is already at our heart that calls us to be a little irresponsible, quote unquote, but then
Yeah.
we're being responsible following God.
Mm.
Sense.
Mm.
You might be able to explain it a little bit deeper than me.
Perfectly, no, perfectly said. Perfectly said. I think that the world teaches us, and I mean, I've been in this cage a lot, the cage of responsibility, where I have to be responsible. And because I have to be responsible, I'm going to do things that in the world's, or in not in the world, in society's terms, are irresponsible. So I can't do that because I have to be responsible.
Can you give an example?
Oh man, I mean, the biggest example I can give right now, and it's the opposite. I'm being responsible, responsibly irresponsible. And by that, I mean, for a long time, the calling was at my heart to go do and support men and women, specifically through coaching and development. But responsibility had me in the space of no, let me get a job. And within that job, I'll be able to be responsible for my household. Right. So there I was being irresponsibly responsible, meaning I was not being responsible to the calling that was at my heart. I was being responsible to what society tells me to be responsible for.
Mm.
And that's not what we're here for. There is a space for that. And again, this is now where like we're living in a completely different reality. Like if these versions of Lauren and Sebastian met Lauren and Sebastian 2 years ago, I know for a fact I'd be like, you're crazy. Like you're telling me that I should.
I feel like we would be crazy, but then there would be that part of us who like, oh,
Well, there'd be curiosity.
like, oh, I see what you're doing. Good, oh, good job. Like that, the like soul.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think that we theoretically always knew that the magic is in the in between steps. Where now we're in the in between, seeing the magic unfold.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's it's we've been living so comfortably,
Yeah.
and like there's moments where we get uncomfortable, but we've been living so comfortably, desiring a breakthrough, and breakthroughs typically don't come from comfort zones.
No.
You have to get uncomfortable to experience that breakthrough, and usually it comes in a challenging time. And so we have been by by choice putting ourselves in very uncomfortable positions.
Yep.
But that's where we're meant to be. Like, and we have full conviction in saying, like,
Yeah.
God is just like ruffling up our feathers and like really sharpening us in different ways so we can shine in different areas.
Mm.
And it's scary. It's doesn't feel safe, but I feel safe in it.
You're talking about abiding. That's a deep place for you to be in, because you don't have to know exactly where, but you feel safe.
Yeah.
You feel safe regardless of the unknown.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear that, because I know that's been a process for us to grow through.
Yeah, and like being real, there's moments I feel safe. I feel like
get
that,
it.
and there's moments where I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I get it.
That's the humanness. The human side comes back to it. It's like societal.
Yeah.
What are we doing here? Where are we going to leave everything?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as you're sharing that, I'm thinking about May, and it's like different life.
It's going to be a different life.
May 2024 and beyond. Watch out.
Right now.
Not right now. It's going to be exciting. Yeah. Really.
Okay, so step one is really figuring out what is God's will for you and really abiding in whatever that is. Right? Praying about it, asking about it.
Yeah.
And then step two is again asking.
Yeah.
Forward. Like yes, there might have been that seed that got planted.
Yeah.
But continuously like saying what you desire.
Yeah.
And making sure that you're aligned with that with God.
And this is where personal development is such a big step in this process. Yeah. Remember listening to Prophet EJ, and he was saying something along the lines of a lot of people they get into their spiritual man or woman, meaning they're diving deep into their spirit, but then they leave out the intellect. They don't develop themselves. So now you have the person that's following blindly. And yes, there is faith in that. However, they haven't developed themselves. And God is going to give us based on our capacity. He's going to increase our ability based on our capacity. So if our capacity is that of a child, we're not going to be able to have the ability to be able to go and touch millions of people if we choose to do that. If we have the capacity of only having, let's say, enough to pay for the bills, then we're not going to have enough to go and pay for charity or create nonprofits or support people around the world in any sort of giving that we want to. So it's really key that the asking, you dive into who you are as a human. We are human. We're spirit first, but we are human. And the human, this is where yoga for me is like, yoga is not a religion, it's a science. And it relates so clearly for me in regards to my personal relationship with Christ, because the mind is a very tricky place to be in. And when we step into the body and we start to move through the body, we start to appreciate, acknowledge, love the body, we actually start to step into our temple, which gives us the ability to step further into Christ.
Mm.
So all of these questions that you may not be asking, however, maybe you're just doing scriptural work without actually diving deep into yourself, it's unbalanced. It's unbalanced. One of the key things when it comes to a spiritual growth, not just biblical, but we can talk about the Upanishads or the Gita or the Torah, like all of them, they all talk about meditating on the word, not just reading it. Like, it's not just like, okay, 10 pages today, check.
Yeah, there's something profound that when you just go deeper into the essence of word and just the essence of God and silence and peace.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just because again, like it's something like when you dream, right? Like where do you go?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
We are open to a whole new realm of whatever that,
Yeah.
right? And similar with meditation. However, sometimes people are like, with meditation, but it's such a beautiful place because you get beyond flesh, you get
Mm-hmm.
beyond this physical experience. And I mean, we daydream all the time.
Yep.
We are constantly like having vocabulary back and forth with ourselves all day. We might be even envisioning different scenarios. And even if you were to close your eyes right now and think of a vacation, like you could visualize that.
Right.
And so there's so much power in our mind when it comes to just sitting in quiet space, sitting in the presence, in the essence of sacred text and scripture and being in that essence.
Yeah.
And it might feel like, oh, am I doing this right? Or, I know for me for a long time, I didn't really know how, quote unquote, to meditate.
Yeah.
And there definitely is different techniques to support different people. But again, it just goes to taking that first step or simply just like being quiet and having the internal conversation. And we can get rid of our sight, which is our number one um, way in which we take in information. When we get rid of the sight, we're able to experience a whole different avenue
Mm-hmm.
of magic,
Mm-hmm.
of beauty, of essence of who we really are.
Mm-hmm. And the brain works in patterns. So like as you're saying, like we're seeing the world around us. Because we're seeing the world around us, we're not really diving deeper into what's beyond that. This is why things like, for example, you could meditate while you're playing an instrument. Last night we were with a bunch of men. I was with a bunch of men, and we were drumming, and I was playing a Native American drum, and just like a heartbeat. And the meditation that I went into, I was fully present, fully awake. I wasn't sitting down, but just the idea of drumming into this thing started to get me into a meditative state. Meaning, I wasn't worrying, I wasn't thinking, I was present.
Mm.
And I know we talk a lot about scripture, specifically the Bible, but if you have known us or have been following, you know that we're not pushing this onto you. It's just our personal faith. So if that's not in alignment with you, go seek your own. I think one of the key things that for us as humans is to always be asking what it is for us that's going to be meaningful, not to take somebody else's definition for what's meaningful. You get yourself to that standpoint and you just may find yourself being empty because it's not necessarily you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you really start to get deeper into who you are, into who you're not, into what moves you, into what distracts you, into what takes you away from your purpose, into what pulls you towards your purpose, into what values move you and move you away from. Once you start to understand those things, you can then create a deeper relationship. And it starts with you. It starts with every person to be able to understand that through the patterns that we create day to day, it gives us access to understanding ourselves and the world around us in deeper ways. And we need that in the world today. I think the world is in a place where there's a lot of seeking that is not being done. And it's typically the ones that are not doing it, the ones that are also numbing, escaping. And if that's you, my biggest compassion to you, because I get it. It's much easier to numb than to seek. When you start to step outside of that numbing into the seeking, you start to see that life, it takes on a whole new life. It's like the trees look brighter, the scents smell sweeter, yeah, maybe the challenges and pains will also feel deeper. But in that, you're feeling deeper and you're
You're
tapping into,
feeling.
yeah, you're tapping into some deeper resources that you've never been into before.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest gift that we have is the ability to feel.
Yeah.
And we're a woman on one of our retreats, and she's breaking down a lot of different walls for herself.
Yeah. God bless. I know you're
And
listening. We love you.
something that she came to realize was that she never really allowed herself to feel.
Hmm.
For the first time, she was actually feeling,
Yeah.
and she had a huge emotional release. It was very beautiful to witness
Yeah.
her going through her processing of that. I find that so many times because life just seems so harsh and so hard and rigid, and there's due dates and deadlines, and you have to look a certain way and be a certain way. We put up all these walls and we don't allow ourselves to actually experience
Mm-hmm.
our true essence. It's like, oh, I'm not supposed to feel this way,
Mm-hmm.
or I shouldn't do this, or this is going to look bad. And so we built up all of this clothing. Now it's like, time to like undo some layers.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you're allowing yourself to really just shine through and be you.
Mm-hmm. Which all encompasses faith. Like everything we're saying falls under the umbrella of faith. Because even as we're going through challenges, even as we're realizing that this isn't where I'm supposed to be, even as I'm making myself wrong for having done this again, can you have the faith to know that, okay, this is happening for me, not to me? Can I actually step into this situation from a place of how am I going to grow from it? No, not how am I going to escape from it? And in that, we're developing faith. We're developing that sense of knowing.
Mm.
And you can have faith in yourself first and then start to find God. Like, I get it. In a world where practicality is first and very pragmatic, believing in something doesn't exist is like, what? Okay, so why don't you trust in yourself? Why don't you start to explore yourself? Why don't you give yourself a commitment that you actually follow through upon and start to see how God starts to play in that situation? Even something as simple as waking up every morning at 5 a.m. Even something as simple as brushing your teeth before anything else.
Maybe not even 5, just waking up.
Sure. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, give yourself a commitment, something you commit to. I'm not saying to go and wake up at 5. I'm saying give yourself a commitment that you can stick to. And in that commitment, to start to understand that when you don't feel like doing it, that is God moving through you, prompting you. And in that moment, you could either go back into the old group of who you used to be, or you could say, you know what, I gave myself a commitment and I feel that prompting. Because isn't it interesting that when we give ourselves a commitment, we don't do it, we then feel guilt? Like, where's that coming from?
Mm. I've always heard that guilt isn't actually a bad emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually just the bumpers.
Yeah.
Saying,
good.
like, oh, wait, like, you're not actually supposed to go down this road. That's why you're supposed to stay in this lane. This is why you feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're actually not aligned and attuned with where you are really meant to be.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as far as we know, or science tells us, we're the only species that ruminates on the past. Again,
That's wild.
how they know that, I don't know. But as far as science says,
Like, what do you mean by ruminate? I don't know.
like living in the past. Like, we don't know if animals, or let's say, like, okay, let's say the closest to our DNA, which are chimps, which that's, you give me that face, but that's scientifically, like, that's the closest to our DNA, chimpanzees.
I thought you meant like we were evolved.
I'm not gonna go down that road. Right. Yeah.
I know.
The what was it? The Conference for Human Evolution.
Yeah.
Dive deeper into it, and just you just opened up Pandora's box on that. Let's just say that history is not always written for everybody, but by a few. But what I was saying is that here we are. If we as humans were the only ones that like get caught up in what could have been, so instead of living in what can be, we're focusing on what was. So it's like we're driving, looking at the rearview mirror. Imagine that. It's like you're going forward for sure, but you're looking at the past, and you're like, "Oh, I should have turned there. Turn too late." Too late. So stop looking behind you. It's okay to reflect. And this is why we talk so much about reflection, journaling, going through events that have you reflect, going to a coach that has you reflect. It has you give a conscious time to look back on those.
But you're not always living in it.
No.
Because yeah, it really is like you're going forward, but you're looking backwards. To like, are you actually present to what's in front of you?
Yeah. Yeah. Just the other day, I was over, I was at the beach, jumped in the water, and my shorts were wet, obviously, because I was in the water. And for a while, my shorts were wet. And the way in which I'm thinking about this now, it's like, if I don't change my shorts, they're going to be wet for a very long time. So in life, if we're not changing our shorts, if we're not looking at the past and seeing what we could have gotten from it, seeing what we could have learned from it, seeing how we could prevent it from happening again in the future, we're gonna be walking around with some rashes around our legs. Nobody wants that.
This is a really bad analogy.
It's okay. We're getting better.
Usually you're really good.
We're getting better. I appreciate the feedback.
Okay, so the whole point of this conversation
Yeah.
is to really gain clarity to move through life.
Yeah.
Right. And so number one, is it your will? Is it God's will?
Yeah.
Number two, asking.
Yep.
Right. Asking is like what you desire in your life, getting clarity around what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Number three is taking action.
Yeah. And just really quick with asking, because it's like we can ask for things, but what would happen if you ask for wisdom or guidance and direction? Like, be mindful of how much you're asking for things, because again, now we're stepping into the first part, which is it temporary or is it or is it eternal? Because if we're asking for wisdom, that's forever. Because guess what? You can then pass on that wisdom to somebody else in your life. But if you're asking for $10,000, guess what? It's gonna be gone in a week. So what are you asking for? Are you asking for things that are gonna be eternally supportive to you and your legacy? Or are you asking for things that are temporary for just your pleasure?
That's good.
And action. Step number 3.
Action.
Yeah.
Right? Just taking that step before you even see what's in front of you.
Yeah.
Like just being so confident that like if you know it's the right step, then why are you second guessing it?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you know you're meant to leave the relationship, why are you in it still?
Get out of that groove.
Yeah, if you know you're meant to leave a position, why are you still in it still? I get that it feels good. I get that it feels comfortable. But so much beauty, so much joy and adventure happens when you fully honor that deeper calling that you're being called to.
Yeah.
And it's grabbing your armor, it's grabbing your faith and your heart and saying, I can do this. I got this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't, for those who might be listening who have served in the army,
Some force.
in some force, like, thank you.
Yeah,
However,
100%.
we don't, not a lot of us have to go through that.
Mm-hmm.
We don't typically have to go to battle. We haven't. Something really profound that I got when I was in Israel was how everyone, by the time they turned, I believe, 18, had to go into the army, women and men. And there was just something about them, the way in which they carried themselves was so different than your typical 18-year-old here in America. And as I would say, we are fortunate that we don't have to go to war and we don't have to be put in those positions. It has trained us to be weak.
Yeah.
It has trained us to be, especially with today's day and age, like we take so many things for granted. We haven't developed fortitude of actually going after something, of being disciplined, of being adventurous, of being even curious, of like growing. And so we have the ability to grow deeply in our faith and taking that call and taking your armor when you need to and just walking in that faith. You're not necessarily going to battle in person in this physical realm, but you might be going to battle spiritually.
Yeah.
But God always prevails.
Yeah. And we're meant to be uncomfortable. Yeah. We're meant to be in a new space of growth all the time. As you're pointing to, like where we're at right now as a society, on the last episode that I spoke solo, I was talking about this and how cyclically in history, it's a very similar cycle. Tough times make for tough men make for easy times make for weak men make tough times. So so grateful to have been born in the 21st century where I have the ability to press a button and get food delivered to my house. I'm so grateful to be able to press a button and have a car pick me up in 5 minutes. Right?
Right, we don't have to like walk or ride a bike
No,
or ride a
it's
horse.
the convenience is absolutely amazing. And all of that to say is it's also training that things are microwave mentality. If we're looking for a good meal, we don't put it in the microwave. There used to be a time though where like family dinner time. Okay, Uncle Jimmy, your food's done. Let me put mine in the microwave. Microwave dinners. I remember the first time I had a microwave dinner. I was like, what am I eating? Like this is the first time I've never seen a microwave dinner in Colombia. I didn't have a microwave in Colombia.
My dad would always threaten us with microwave dinner, so we didn't appreciate the meal.
Good job, Rob. Your dad cooks amazing food, so I can understand where that was coming from for him. But it's crazy because we don't realize that this is actually causing for us to become weak. And in that week, we'll create challenging times. And then, like, I take a look, Gary Vee's talking a lot about this. He's deep conversation about how you got these millennials now and these Y generation, whatever alphabet letter it is, this next generation of children that are growing up with technology. He's like, they're not lazy, they're smart. Because why would they work for somebody else for $40,000 a year doing something they hate when they can make $100,000 a year by posting up videos that actually catch attention and companies now pay them? Doesn't make them lazy. No, they are going to make the next wave of life much different than what it is today because we got used to things being easy and comfortable. But they're shifting. Mm-hmm. And as we talk about action, I couldn't help but think about Old Testament when God tells, I believe it's King David, maybe King Solomon, I don't know. But he says, walk around the city 7 times because they're about to be taken over. They're trying to take the city back. And God says, go walk the city 7 times, like day and night. Just go walk around the city, the perimeter of the city, 7 nights or 7 days. And then at the end of the 7 days, play the trumpets and then the walls will come crashing down. It's like, think about that. Think about what if God were to tell you that. Go walk around the neighborhood 7 times, and after the 7th time, go and scream, and your breakthrough will come. Will you actually do it?
Would you do it? It's like the story of Noah, too. Yeah. Building a humongous boat.
Before rain was even a thing. Maybe not water, but rain.
Rain, yeah.
It wasn't like, it was unknown. And
people were probably like, what are you building?
And it was for like 150 years he's building this thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, these are all great stories for us to say, for me to say, I've been taking this on for a week. Yeah. I'm done. I've tried my best. I can't believe I haven't gotten it.
Yeah. No. When you compare it to the stories in the Bible, yeah, specifically, for me, it's just like, oh wow, shut up.
Yeah.
Like, and not to say that it won't be challenging and it can be difficult, but like, I need to build that mental fortitude for myself.
And I think that's why for us, where we're at is the perfect place for us to be in. Because we got so comfortable having things that were already there where we didn't realize how actually we were sitting in wet diapers or a wet bathing suit for a very long time. Just trying to make that analogy work again. Did it work?
I think so. You're still listening to this. We really appreciate it. Some level of clarity or knowledge to you. And, knowledge is great, but it's useless if there's no action taken on it. So we encourage you just to, if you have that deeper calling on your heart to make a different transition in life or a challenging thing that you just feel like you're being called to, we encourage you just to lean on your faith and be surrounded by people who can support you and speak life into you, because that also makes such a huge impact. You're not crazy. You're not alone in it either. So we encourage you to take that step, and thank you for listening.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to go deeper on that last part in regards to developing your faith, the last episode I spoke about it, like deeper into how to create that sense of faith. And if you are part of the community, join us deeper. The newsletter that's going to start on 2024 is going to be different than the emails that are being sent out today. This is going to be a space where we're going to give much more value, much more support, give you as part of our community the opportunity to share what you're going through. We've had some amazing testimonies from people in the community sharing with us what the podcast is doing for them, the relationships we're building. We want to make it so that we can all be together on this journey. We want to make it so that we create a sense of community, not just Lauren and I talking. We want to hear from you. We want to understand what you like, what you don't like. We want to hear, like, what are your favorite types of food? What are the things that you like to do on a day-to-day basis? What are some of your hobbies? What are some of your favorite music to listen to? At the end of the day,
we want to vibe out with you. And so we're creating
yes,
some exciting new platforms and abilities to do so.
Yeah.
And we're excited to launch that in 2024.
Yep.
And also, if you found value out of this episode, I encourage you to leave us a review. Let us know your thoughts. Reviews really support us in getting it out there.
Yeah.
It does really, I know kind of, you might get asked reviews all the time from different places, but specifically with podcasts, it really does make a big impact. So we appreciate so much the messages that we get through Instagram or through text message. And if you wouldn't mind just taking a few minutes to leave us a review, because that would also support us greatly.
Yes, thank you.
We'll see you on the next episode.
Woo!
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to follow, like, and subscribe to stay updated on future episodes. And we would love to know how you enjoyed today's episode by leaving us a review. We look forward to continuing this journey of self-discovery and connection with you, and we'll see you on the next episode. Much love.